More alike than different. Everyone listened attentively as the woman spoke. If you want to say okay, don't make a circle with your thumb and first finger, the woman began. That means okay here in the United States, but in Russia, it's an obscene gesture. The audience of 300 Americans chuckled. A few people took notes. It's all right to admire something, the woman continued, but don't be too enthusiastic. Don't say, I really like your tablecloth. Your Russian friend will offer you the tablecloth and be offended if you don't take it. Remember that in general, life in Russia is not as comfortable as life in the United States. You might not have hot running water, or you might have to share a bathroom with 5 or 6 people. The woman was preparing the Americans for their trip to Russia. In Russia, the language, customs, and food would be different. Even simple things like making a phone call would be different. The Americans wanted to learn about these differences before their trip. They didn't want to experience culture shock. When they arrived in Russia, the Americans were glad that they had prepared for their trip. Most of them experienced only a little culture shock. They enjoyed their visit and made a lot of Russian friends. Making friends was, in fact, the purpose of the trip. It was planned by Friendship Force International, an organization that promotes world peace. Friendship Force International believes that people who are friends will not fight wars. So, to help people from all over the world become friends, it organizes and exchanges people. It has sent more than 500,000 people to live with families in other countries for a week or two. The U.S.-Russian exchange was one of the largest exchanges it has ever organized. Friendship Force sent 300 Americans to Russia and 300 Russians to the United States. The Russians, like the Americans, prepared for their visit by learning about life in the other country. Still, they too experienced a little culture shock. The Russians knew that Americans were fond of pets, but they were shocked to see pets inside homes. They couldn't believe their eyes when they saw dogs eating in the kitchen and sleeping on people's beds. They were surprised at the difference between everyday life in Russia and in the United States. The Americans' lives, they said, were much easier. A Russian woman gasped when she saw an American pour rice directly from a box into a pan of boiling water. You didn't wash the rice? She asked. She explained that at home she had to wash the rice carefully and pick out all the stones. Are you kidding? The American said. If people here had to do that, nobody would buy rice. The Russians knew that Americans liked to eat fast food in restaurants, but they were disappointed to see that Americans ate fast meals at home too. In Russia, the evening meal often lasts an hour or two because families sit at the table and talk. When American families eat together, if they eat together, they often eat quickly and don't take time for long conversations. The Russians thought that was a shame. In spite of their differences in language and culture, the Russians and Americans became friends. In fact, most people who go on Friendship Force trips make friends no matter where they go. The women in the photo, for example, became friends during a Friendship Force exchange in Vietnam. The woman with the light-colored hair is from the United States. For 2 weeks, she was a guest of a Vietnamese woman and her 2 daughters. By the end of the visit, the 4 women were friends, even though not long ago their countries were enemies. Perhaps an 11-year-old girl summarized the Friendship Force experience best. She and some children from her school traveled to Russia with the American group. When they returned to the United States, their teacher asked them to write about their trip. She wrote, "I have learned a lot from this experience. I learned to adapt to a different culture, and I learned that people all over the world are more alike than different."